Have you ever wondered what it would feel like to have someone try their absolute best to provoke you and to feel absolutely nothing? To have, true emotional immunity? Well, that's exactly what we're going to break down today.
So, the whole idea here rests on one really simple shift in how you see things. Those insults, those little jabs, they're not weapons. They're not attacks. They're actually invitations. They're little tests to see if you're foolish enough to give away your power.
And let's be really clear about this. Getting angry is basically a form of biological submission. Every single time you lose your cool, you're literally handing someone else the remote control to your own nervous system. You're signing a contract that says, hey, you can control me.
Okay, so if we're going to cut those strings, we first have to understand what's going on inside. We have to map out that internal biological trap that makes us dance whenever someone else decides to pull.
So why does a trigger even work in the first place? It's fascinating, really. It's not about what's right or wrong. You get triggered because deep down, on a subconscious level, you're either afraid the insult might be true, or you actually believe that someone else's opinion has the power to shape your reality.
Viktor Frankl figured this out under the most horrific circumstances you can possibly imagine. He realized that between what happens to you and how you respond, there's a little space. But for most of us, that gap is totally collapsed. We just react instantly, kind of like an animal, instead of actually choosing how we're going to respond. The real work is prying that gap back open.
And biologically, this is what's happening inside that tiny, collapsed gap. The primitive reptilian part of your brain just takes over. It hijacks your system, shutting down all your logic, all your strategy. When you're angry, you literally become less intelligent. And manipulators, they hunt for this state. It turns you into a machine, running on code that's super easy for them to predict.
So how do you fight biology? Well, you fight biology with biology. Neurobiologist Andrew Huberman talks about this technique. It's basically a physical kill switch for that panic response. It's simple. 2 quick inhales through the nose, and then 1 long, slow exhale through the mouth. This one action physically forces your heart rate down and brings your logical brain back online.
All right, so once you've started to manage your internal state, we have to move to the external game. This is where you completely reframe the attack itself. You stop seeing it as a personal threat and start seeing it for what it is, just raw data.
And this chart illustrates that shift perfectly. I want you to think about it like a doctor looking at a patient who's, vomiting. The doctor doesn't get angry at the vomit, right? They analyze it. It's a symptom of some deeper sickness. An insult is exactly the same thing. It's just someone else vomiting their own misery and insecurity all over you. So don't take it personally. Observe it clinically.
There's actually a psychological term for this. It's called projective identification. Basically, they feel worthless inside, so they try to make you feel worthless. It's like they're trying to upload a computer virus of their own misery right into your system. And you know what? Your anger is the little progress bar that says upload complete. You've just let yourself become an emotional landfill for their junk.
Here's another way to think about it. In this game, your attention is currency, and your emotional stability is your wealth. Every provocation is just a bad business pitch from someone who's emotionally bankrupt. There's this great story about Julius Caesar. When he was captured by pirates, he didn't pay them with fear or anger. He laughed at them, told them their ransom demand was insultingly low, and then calmly promised he'd come back and crucify them all, which, by the way, he actually did. He just refused to pay them with a reaction.
So now you get the internal biology, and you understand the external game. Now we get to the fun part, the tactical moves. This is the psychological judo that can disarm pretty much any verbal attack thrown your way.
All right, here's a classic one. It's designed to do one thing, make you defensive. The expected response is, no, I'm not. And the second you say that, you've validated their frame and you're already losing.
But you're not going to do that. Instead, you use something called asymmetrical agreement. You just agree with the premise. By agreeing, you remove all the friction. You take the weapon they tried to hit you with, you look at it, and you just hand it back. Their brain just short circuits. They were ready for a fight, not for you to completely agree with them.
And this all ties back to a really core Stoic idea. You see, most of our anger comes from this crazy delusion that we can control things that we absolutely cannot. And what's number 1 on the list of things you have 0 control over? Other people's opinions.
So what this all boils down to is this. You have to abandon the mission of trying to defend your reputation, especially to people you don't even respect. Your only job is to fortify your own inner citadel. That means your perceptions, your judgments, your responses. Everything else, it's just noise.
Okay, and this brings us to the final phase, the end game. This is the point where all these different techniques stop being tools that you have to consciously use, and they just become who you are, a permanent state of being.
To get to this level of freedom, you have to do something, well, something pretty radical. You have to murder the ego. And why? Because your ego is the giant target painted on your chest. The bigger it is, the more you care about how you're seen, and the easier you are to hit.
But when you can finally let go of that need for everyone else's approval, you achieve this incredible state of self-awareness. Their words, their little storms of drama, it all just washes right over you. It's not about being cold. It's just about being immovable, a fortress.
You know, society always tells you to just manage your anger. But what if you could do better? What if you could just eliminate it? I'm not talking about bottling it up. I'm talking about building a psychological framework that makes you biologically immune to disrespect. So today, we're not just managing emotions. We're building a fortress. We're moving beyond simple coping to achieve total, unshakable detachment. Just let that sink in for a second. Every single time you get angry, you are literally handing the remote control of your own nervous system over to someone else. You're giving them permission to dictate your biological state, and usually it's to someone you don't even respect. It's a willing submission.
So how do we build this immunity? We're going to construct a 4-phase architecture. First, we've got to understand the anger trap. Then, we'll install a biological override. After that, we'll master the art of deflection. And finally, we'll reach a state of total immunity.
Okay, let's dive into Section 1, the anger trap. Look, before we can even dream of escaping this thing, we have to understand how it works. We need to pop the hood and look at the internal mechanics. Why does it have such an iron grip on us?
Well, it all starts with a critical concept called the amygdala hijack. When someone provokes you, the most primitive reptilian part of your brain literally hijacks the controls from your logical, rational mind. And in that moment, you are, for all intents and purposes, biologically stupider. You're way more predictable. And guess what? Manipulators, they know this. They're literally hunting for that reaction.
You want to see this power dynamic in action? Just look at Napoleon back in 1809. He's screaming, throwing this violent tantrum at his minister, Talleyrand. And Talleyrand? He just stood there, completely unbothered. Napoleon storms out, and Talleyrand just turns to the person next to him and says, "What a pity that so great a man should be so ill-bred." Now, who really held the power in that room? The emperor screaming his head off, or the man who refused to dance?
Okay, on to Section 2. Because knowing the trap is one thing, right? But having the tool to actually escape it, that's another thing entirely. This section is all about installing a kill switch for your nervous system, a way to physically seize back control of your own biology.
This whole idea really comes from Viktor Frankl, a survivor of Auschwitz. He called this the sovereign gap. See, for most of us, that gap between a trigger, someone insulting you, and your reaction is almost zero. It's instantaneous. Our goal, our entire mission here, is to consciously pry that gap open, to expand it, to create the space we need for a strategic response, not a reflexive one.
So how do we do it? How do we actually expand that gap in the heat of the moment? We use a tool called the physiological sigh. And no, this is not just taking a deep breath. This is a specific neurobiological tool. You take 2 sharp inhales through your nose. That first one fills your lungs. The second one inflates the tiny little sacs that collapse. Then you do 1 long, slow exhale through your mouth. This dumps the maximum amount of carbon dioxide from your body, which sends a direct, undeniable signal to your brain to calm the hell down. It's literally a forced shutdown of the panic response.
And here's the absolute genius of this move. While the person provoking you is getting louder, faster, more agitated, they're accelerating their physiology, you are using the sigh to deliberately slow yours down. Think about it. In the wild, the prey rushes. The predator is calm. By doing this, you subconsciously signal to their primitive brain that you are not threatened. It's a display of absolute dominance, and you haven't even said a word.
Let's move to Section 3, the art of deflection. Now that our biology is under our own command, we can master the verbal counterattack. But this isn't about fighting back. Oh no, this is about making their attack completely and utterly irrelevant. It's psychological judo.
So to pull this off, you have to completely reframe what an insult actually is. It's not about you, it's never about you. It's a psychological process called projective identification. Basically, the person insulting you is trying to transfer their own internal misery, their own shame, their own inadequacy into you. Think of it like they're trying to upload a virus. And what happens when you get angry? You're accepting the download. You're letting the virus in.
So how do you block the transfer? Well, let's look at two responses. Someone says, "You're so arrogant." The weak response is to get defensive, right? That's not true. I'm not like that. By defending yourself, you validate their attack. You're playing their game. The powerful response is what we call asymmetrical agreement. You agree with the premise, but you own it so completely that you suck all the oxygen out of their attack. You're entirely correct. I am utterly obsessed with my trajectory. What is your point? See what happens? You've taken their weapon, and now they're left holding nothing.
The whole mindset behind this is powerful. It's this: you cannot expose me because I am already standing in the light. A manipulator's only real leverage is your fear of being found out. When you proactively own every single part of yourself, the good and the bad, when you choose to just stand in the light, they have nothing on you. Their power just evaporates.
And that brings us to the final phase, the endgame. Section 4, achieving total immunity. Look, the tools we've talked about are powerful, but to make this state permanent, you need a fundamental philosophical rewiring. You have to go deeper and address the root cause of the anger itself.
This is all about internalizing a few core truths, a few realizations that ultimately lead to the death of the ego. First, you have to understand that your ego is literally a target painted on your chest. The bigger it is, the easier it is for someone to hit. Second, you have to ask yourself a really hard question. Why do I want respect from people I do not respect? Seriously, why? Third, realize that their perception of you isn't your reality. It's their own mental prison. You don't have to live in it with them. And finally, you have to get down to the physics of it. An insult is just vibrating air coming out of a flawed mammal. That's it. It has zero power until you grant it power over your biology.
When you put all this together, it leads to a complete redefinition of power. We're taught that power is action, right? It's the ability to strike back, to destroy someone with your anger. But that's not it. True power, ultimate power, is looking at someone who is trying with all their might to destroy you and feeling absolutely, completely nothing at all.
So I'm going to leave you with a final thought to chew on. As you start to build this immunity, as the noise from other people's opinions and their attacks finally starts to go quiet, you're going to be left alone with your own mind. And the real question you have to ask yourself then is, were you ever really angry at them? Or were you just angry at yourself for allowing them to have access to you for so long?